Hi, and welcome to the first official episode of Screens and Pixels. Last time I did this, I talked about some films and musicals and other stuff, and asked you guys to come up with a title for it because I couldn't figure it out. And I ended up picking Screens and Pixels. I can't find who came up with that. So if you were the one who suggested that in the first video, let me know in the comments. The first thing on the list is First Aid Kit. I've talked about them before, but they have a new album out right now, which I am kind of obsessed with. They are a Swedish folk duo. They're two sisters. I've seen them perform live about 4 or 5 times now. I went to one of their most recent shows in London when they were playing songs from the new album, and at that point I'd only just figured out they were releasing a new album because I'm really bad at keeping up with things. But since that concert I have bought the album, and it's basically one of the only things I listen to. I listen to it on my walk to work. It's great for reading, kind of background music. It's funny because they're Swedish, but they kind of have this really American sort of weird folky accent, and especially with the instruments and some of the lyrics of their new album, it very much sounds like the American South. They do some of the most amazing harmonies I've ever heard, and they sound so good live as well. I'll put some of my favorite songs by them and videos of live performances and things like that in the description so you can check it out, and I will also add a Spotify link to their latest album. So the next artist is called Ásgeir. I have no idea how to pronounce it. He is Icelandic. I randomly found this because Spotify had made this playlist called First Aid Kit and Other Nordic Folk, and one of his songs is on that list and I absolutely loved it. It's very relaxing, also great reading music. This is one of my main things that I look for in music. Most of the songs are in English. There's some in Icelandic, one of my favorite ones. I have no idea what he's singing about, but it sounds great. So if you're in the mood for something soothing and relaxed, check out the links that I'll put in the description. And then I was invited to an early screening of This Is Where I Leave You, which is a film based on the book with the same title by Jonathan Tropper, and it's kind of like a funny family drama. It's basically about a family where the dad dies. The last thing he really wanted was for the entire family to come back together and live under the same roof for a week. Now this is not really my genre of movie, but I was quite interested to see what I would think, and I actually quite enjoyed it. There was a bit of like haha boobs humor. There were also a lot of other things that were like genuinely funny, but mostly there were a lot of things that were really freaking sad. I think I cried about 5 times, which is more than I cried for The Fault in Our Stars. So if you want to go to the cinema and cry and laugh and kind of have this heartwarming story about family and kind of seeing what happens when you come back to the place where you grew up and like you run into the people that you grew up with and might have a history with, then check out This Is Where I Leave You. Now we're gonna do some TV shows. I have 2 shows for people that like Game of Thrones and that feel like there's kind of a Game of Thrones shaped hole in their life right now. First of all, we have Vikings. I watched that a couple of weeks ago. I think it's on the History Channel. It's basically the story of the Vikings going on their English raid. And so if any of you have done that bit of English history, or if you've studied English literature at university, you will know what I'm talking about. What I really enjoyed about this is the bits of history that I recognized from it, but also the characters are pretty great. One of the main female characters is awesome, and one of the most sort of fun and interesting aspects of the show is during their first raid in England they go to a monastery, which you will recognize the name of if you ever studied it, and the leader decides to take an English monk back home, and so this cultural clash and the language barrier is really interesting, and that is like a really funny dynamic. Also really fun, they sort of switch languages sometimes, so when the Vikings go meet the English Anglo-Saxon army, it will switch point of view, so sometimes you can hear the English speak legit Old English with subtitles. I had to take Middle English and Old English at university, so again, like things I recognize. And then the other time around, it's the Vikings that need the subtitles. I'm gonna put the intro for the show in the description, not the trailer. With these shows, I found that the trailers were never impressive. They never convinced me to watch the show, and then I would actually watch it and think, yes, this is really good. And the second show I sort of realized does the same thing as Vikings does. It's called Outlander, and I watched the entire first season, which is all there is, yesterday and today. And it is about a couple in 1945. They got married before the Second World War, had to sort of split up during the war. She became a war nurse and just went through all this horrendous stuff. After the war, they get back together and kind of have to get to know each other again. So they go to Scotland, they go to this kind of magical stone circle where there's druids. She touches one of the stones and is transported through time back to 1743. I had to look that up. So she is found by a group of Scotsmen and kind of taken away to this castle, and she has to pretend that she's from this time. It's quite funny, it's quite dramatic, it's a little bit violent. There's a bit of sexual tension and hot men in kilts with Scottish accents. Again, I will leave the intro to the show in the description. So those were all my recommendations for the month. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you guys later. Doei!